Hi, welcome. Very good morning. It's Gene from Afstar. Did you get your nuclear radiation detector? If not, why? You know, we have never been so close to a nuclear conflict around the world. I think you'll agree with me on that. Even the atomic clock is set to just seconds before midnight. There's a good reason for that if you look into it. But, this is something that you are absolutely going to need if anything like a nuclear bomb is detonated in your vicinity, because you're not going to know, first of all, if your friends and family are contaminated, and if they are, maybe it's just the clothes that are contaminated. You could get them off, clean them up, scrub them down. You might be able to save their lives, but without a Geiger counter, you're not going to know how much radiation they've been exposed to, how much contamination they are carrying, and not only that, whether your food or your water is contaminated. If it's highly contaminated, it will be your last meal. It will be the last drink you take. If you are carrying around on your clothes radioactive material, remember this: radioactive particles are like tiny glowing blocks of coal that will burn through material eventually after prolonged exposure. So without a radiation detector, you're not going to know if you're contaminated or not. Look, it's £25. Is your wife or your husband or your children worth more than £25? I'm not affiliated with these Geiger counter companies. It's just like I said, for the family members that I've got, I will put these bug out bags together for you, and it will include a respirator, spare filters, and an NBC suit, a nuclear biological warfare suit. That would be the biggest chunk out of that £350, and the rest I'll spend on all the other necessary things that you'll need in a given situation, like medical facilities, a wet tree saw, a tarp, some bungees, some paracord, things like that. But, if you've got nothing, start with one of these, especially in the times that we're in. And you can also, by the way, monitor the levels of the magnetosphere with one of these. If you get an increase in background radiation, then it could be the fact that the magnetosphere is weakening and allowing more gamma, beta and alpha particles through our atmosphere. And in turn, when they collide with other particles, you get muons, which this won't detect that sort of level of radiation. You need a muon detector for that. But, at least you will know or have some idea if the magnetosphere is weakened, because the background levels will increase. And also, if there is a nuclear war, you will be able to determine what is radioactive as opposed to what is not. So for £24, this is a no-brainer. Buy one. Get yourselves one of them, and I'll tell you what I'll do. If a few of you do say in the comments section over the next couple of weeks, we've got the radiation detector, I will do a video and I'll show you how to use it correctly, because you just don't switch these on and introduce your radioactive source to them. You have to take a background reading first, and that usually requires the machine being on for like 4 minutes, so you get a good stable reading of the background, and then you can start introducing your radioactive samples to it, and it will give you a reading above the background, and that's your radiation count for that given sample. So I'll show you how to use it if you get one. The reason why I want you to get one is because, with all what's going on, without one of these, how can you determine whether something is good or bad in your environment? And with Putin, getting much older, no one knows if he's suffering with dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that. But we do know for one thing, he's got his finger on the button of one of the world's largest arsenals of nuclear missiles. And he has been threatening other countries that if they don't do what he wants them to do, then it could lead to a nuclear war. And on that pretext, I think we should all own one of these. And let's face it, they're so cheap. They're not even, you could afford to, I think most people can afford to buy one of those at £25 each. So there is no reason for you not to. If you care about surviving, if you are a prepper, then one of these should have already been in your bag. Okay, let's move on to something else. Something else I wanted to bring to the world's attention, or whoever subscribes to me and on this platform, and I know that we do have a fair few Americans, but look at this. Donald Trump is saying that he's going to cut funding and intelligence to Ukraine because it's going to save American taxpayers' dollars. Yeah, Marco Rubio has just bypassed Congress to send Israel $4 billion in arms, and this is from the United States Department of State. I've signed a declaration to use emergency authorities to expedite the delivery of approximately $4 billion in military assistance to Israel. So, double standards are here, coming from the White House, and this is probably what a lot of people have problems with. First of all, we know why America is supporting Israel, because it is like an aircraft carrier. The state of Israel for America, it gives them access and a platform and a base to access the Middle East. Now, if they have problems with countries like Iran, then they're going to use that asset. But my point is this: if you're trying to save money by not supplying Ukraine with weapons and intelligence, then what are you doing? Supporting Israel with £4 billion of taxpayers' money. Now, this could be to do with an ongoing conflict which is going to start with Iran probably in the next week or so, judging on what Trump has been saying. But there's another angle to this. Netanyahu has an arrest warrant by the International Court, which America said that they would not honour. That's international law. This is the platform which is supposed to, bring justice around the world to other countries that are victims of other nations, atrocities. And if we look at what happened in Gaza, let's face it, there's over 100,000 Palestinians dead that wanted nothing to do with, supporting Hamas. But nevertheless, women, children have been killed, and men, and hospitals have been destroyed, places of worship been destroyed. It's rubble now, and most of the world has stood by and allowed it to happen. But the International Court has said that when Israel cut food and water off to the Palestinians and aid, that was an actual war crime, and Netanyahu was in power at the time, he still is, and therefore the buck stops with him, and he has, like I say, an arrest warrant that the Americans are refusing to uphold. Can you believe that? So not only is there double standards with money going out in the billions to Israel, but they're also ignoring the fact that there is proceedings being brought by the International Court to have Netanyahu arrested and brought to trial over what has happened in Gaza. So, massive double standards, and this is what is, being picked up by a lot of people around the world. And this is why, I'm told this, I'm not sure whether it is the case, but 50% apparently are supporting Donald Trump and 50% aren't. But I just want to add, when you start adding all the other things up, like the tariffs that he's put on China, Canada and Mexico, and soon to do so with Europe, he's turning his friends into enemies. And what I've been saying over the last few weeks to people in America is, do you understand that these tariffs will be coming back on Americans, and that some of their produce, some of their products that they're used to seeing in the shop are going to rise by 25+%, meaning that hyperinflation is a very real possibility over the coming months. And we'll wait and see what happens on the 2nd of April, with retaliatorial tariffs, because this could just run out of control. I have had in the back of my mind, as the world, not just America, but America, especially with the way they're acting, has the world got to a point where hyperinflation is inevitable? Because a lot of business people that I've been speaking to have all noticed at least 2/3 of their buying power or profits have diminished over the last 18 months. And this hasn't just been something that has affected small businesses, it's affected businesses across the range and over the world. I mean, what these tariffs have done so far in China, there was 10% already on tariffs. Donald Trump put a further 10% on there. And then since January to this point, over 500,000 businesses have left China and set up shop in Vietnam, exploiting the fact that Vietnam is not on the tariff list at the moment, and also that the labour is 2/3 cheaper in Vietnam than it is in China at the moment. One of the complaints of these business people was that labour was getting too expensive in China in any case, but having had the Trump tariffs placed on them as well just made it unviable for them to keep the orders that they'd already got. So they moved pretty much overnight, got all their equipment out the factories, set it up on a ship, sent it to Vietnam, and then set the business up over there. And these business people are happy. But think about this. This is what we see happening all around the world. This is the capital system, and it's totally flawed for that reason. Because once a nation of people that have got to a point where their living standards increases, so does the wages, then these companies just look around for another carcass to strip. They are like buzzards. They move from country to country, exploiting cheap labour, and it's acceptable in the capital system as being called business. That's what you do. And it's absolutely wrong, because what happens is when these companies that, like we've seen in January in China, exodus to countries like Vietnam, what it leaves is carnage behind in China. And I know a lot of people in the West aren't really bothered about what goes on in China, but I always say this: use this as a measuring stick as to what could happen down the road for us, because China has over 1 billion people in its population. At the moment, still currently is the largest population on the earth, very closely being pursued by India, which will overtake eventually China's population. And it gives you like a crystal ball as to what will happen next with regards to global economics. But it always affects the big populations first, and then follows down the line of lesser and lesser population sizes. So I think it's totally wrong that that America has stopped supplying Ukraine, yet they are now supplying Israel. For the reason that they stopped supplying Ukraine was because they said we need to start being more responsible with money and taxpayers' money. But then in the same breath, they're sending £4 billion worth of arms to Israel. Putting that on the side, Trump talking about pulling out of NATO, I think that'll be a huge mistake. But I know that there's a lot of Americans saying that the European countries and other members of NATO don't put nothing close to what the Americans do. But I think what you need to do to have a balanced argument on that is look at how much the GDPs of these other countries have compared to the United States. And like I said in a video the other day, if the United States spends 5% of their GDP, then it's fair that other countries spend 5% GDP, regardless of the size of the GDP. Like America has close on 28 trillion in the year's worth of GDP, gross domestic produce, whereas the UK has probably between 2 and 4 trillion. So, if we spend 5% of that, it's just as harmful as America spending 5% of their 28 trillion. They've just got a bigger pot of money. And, it's fair that if, we couldn't afford to match what America's spends on its military force, simply because they've got £28 trillion to decide where they're going to put that money. We only have 2 to 4 trillion. But if we all say, yeah, we'll put 5% of our GDP in, that's fair. But I think Donald Trump don't see it like that. And, okay, if America wants to go its own way in the future, then I say best of luck to you, because what we've just done here in the in Europe, the International Monetary Fund has set a fund close to $1 trillion. It's 850 billion, which is almost £1 trillion, or trillion euros, to spend on rearming Europe. So we can go it alone. There are plenty of countries within NATO, other than America, with nuclear arms that can deliver just as much devastation if needed to be, so we can defend ourselves. It's quite clear. And what do we need, therefore, America, if they want to be, like they are with Canada and Mexico and China, not caring too much about how much they upset their neighbours and how much they upset NATO members, then let them carry on, because I think it'll be a huge mistake if America do pull out of NATO. One other thing I want to just talk about before we end the video, so we'll do that now, and that is to do with Tesla's stock market shares. And this is looking at 1 day. We will look at 5 days of trading, 1 month of trading, and then really when we get to 6 months, we can see what is causing all the hysteria. And that's this. So to explain this, obviously, if we look at November at the lowest point there, where it was at $213, now compare it to where it is at its lowest point. I'll go back. So it was at 222, which is still more than what it was in November. So if you held Tesla shares as part of your investment portfolio, and you had them in November and before, there has been no change to the value of those stocks. And what happened since November, where it peaked to $479, is just the hype of Elon Musk working with Donald Trump in the new, in the White House for the foreseeable future. Some very clever people started buying stocks because they knew there was going to be a hysteria. And basically what we're looking at here, this peak and then it diving back off, is just, let's call them tourist purchases of stock, that knew that it was going to increase, and then, they rid it up to, $400, and then they sold it and rid it back down. So obviously we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars here during this peak that we're looking at, but it's subsided and it's gone back down to what it was prior to November. And what I'm saying is, if you had stocks in Tesla prior to November, then you are still just a little bit up, even though things are leveling down. If we look at how it's stabilising just over the 1 day, you can see there's not a lot of change. Over 5 days, a little bit of a dip, but still at the moment the stock at its lowest level is still worth more than what it was in November. So Tesla stocks are a good investment. And I just want to show you this. If we go to the maximum we can look at over 5 years, we can see the peak here, what just happened, where it goes up to $400 and then drives back down to $230, which is still more than what it was in November. We go to the worst point there, just in 2004, I think it's around about June. No, it's actually April. We can see it's at 147 at its lowest point. But then it gradually went up to this peak and it's gone back down. But, this happens. You get hedge funds, you get these tourist stock traders that make short-term investments and then they get out. And that's exactly what happened. But, you can see that, Tesla stocks are pretty much stable. So there isn't, like people are saying at the moment, Tesla stocks crashing. They've just returned to their November average. And I'm pretty sure that if you've got Tesla stocks over the coming years, it will gradually go up. So, with what I've been watching on X, formerly known as Twitter, people smashing their TVs whilst looking at the stock prices of Tesla. Well, you know what you should have done? You should have cashed out when they went up to $400. You should have realised that this was just a hype, and it was going to be a short-term lived thing anyhow, because it went up so fast. It doubled in a matter of weeks, and then it dropped in a matter of a couple of months. So it was never a real indication of Tesla doing something right that made their stocks go up, because as soon as it went up, it went back down. Anyhow, that's my take on that. So I don't know what people are saying. Oh, Tesla stocks are going to go crash and they're going to go to zero. I don't see that happening. But if you are getting wet feet and you're worried, why don't you take your money out of Tesla? If you had shares before November, you've got a little increase on your money, and they're worth a little bit more than what they are. Even right now, even after losing half the stock value over the Christmas period, they're still worth more. And if you want to be a little bit cautious, then why not just take half of it out? But if you can't afford, to invest in Tesla stocks, don't do it. And if you can't afford to take the risk, don't do it, because everything is a risk in this day and age. Nothing is guaranteed, and it is a gamble. That's all I'm going to say. So, I don't know why people are crying. Yeah. I'm not going to be too hard on Elon Musk. I know I might have said a few things about him in the past, but I'm not going to be too hard on him, because you know what? That's the wrong thing to do. We shouldn't be picking on people that are successful, just because, they've made a success in business, because those are the people we should actually be, supporting, and we should be following, doing what they do, because Elon Musk is just an ordinary guy like us, and if he can do it, we could, if we put the effort in, if we had the right minerals, we could do it exactly the same as what he did. But I don't think it's right to bash a person that's successful just because they're successful. Elon Musk has got some good products. I don't agree with some of them, because I know it's going to be harmful in the future. I mean, when his robots start coming, into the factories and replacing human beings, I don't like that just as much as I don't like self-service tills in supermarkets, because, inevitably jobs get lost, and we need more jobs than we ever have done, because of technological advancements is stripping industries and manufacturing jobs quicker than anything these days. It leaves me thinking, where are people going to access money to participate in this capital system? And with an increasing population that we see happening around the world, well, that's more people that need jobs. So there's problems in a catastrophic runaway effect at the moment, and it's not being addressed by politicians. It just isn't. If you've got a job now, it won't be a job like we used to call it for life. You used to have jobs, and your boss would say, if you stay here and you do this, and you'll have a job for life. Those jobs for life don't exist anymore, because the velocity in the market changes so fast, and therefore there isn't such thing as a job for life anymore, like there was 30 years ago. Okay, I'll leave it there, guys. There's a link down there if you want to help support us. I'm interested in your comments on the things we've talked about. And remember, that Geiger counter could save your life, could save your wife's life, or your husband's life, or your son's life, or your daughter's life, or any other member of a family. But without it, if an event does happen, you haven't got it, how will you know what is contaminated and what isn't? You could be putting some water in your mouth that is highly radioactive, and that mouthful of water could be the thing that sends you off to your grave. For £25, you can buy a Geiger counter that can tell you whether it's radioactive, safe to drink or not. Simple as that. So, I'm trying to help you guys there. Like I said, I'm not affiliated with these companies. Choose whatever Geiger counter you need, but make sure it's capable of reading alpha, beta and gamma, and that you can do a background reading before you actually introduce your radioactive sample to it. And that's the way you do it properly. And like I say, I'll help you in a video. I'll show you how to use a Geiger counter, no problem. Link down there if you want to help support us on. You can support us on a one-off coffee or whatever, PayPal there, and there's also Patreon. Only one other thing to say is, guys, take care of your loved ones. As always, bye for now.